Hello, we are the Group 5 from 19dB. Today, we are going to explain Chapter 6, which includes the material of words and pieces of word. This is the topic that we are going to talk about, starting with defining words, identifying words, morphemes, recognition of morphemes, types of morphemes, allomorphs, word classes, and major word classes. Let's start this material with the first chapter, defining words. What does the word actually mean? Here, the word appears to be a widespread concept. Even in a primitive culture, components are often able to identify words. This is somehow surprising because nobody has yet to propose a satisfactory universal definition of the notion of the word. And even the word appears to be a widespread concept, but yet it is a very difficult and a challenging task to give a definition for the word. Let's see the best known definition of words. Bloomfield defined a word as a minimum of 3 morphemes. This definition proposed by the American linguist Bloomfield. This definition means that it is the smallest form that can occur by itself. But why this definition is practically unsatisfactory? Because Bloomfield's this definition works best from written English only. We conditionally leave a space on the other side, and the linguists are basically concerned with the spoken word, not the written one. And the two do not necessarily coincide. Consider the rhyme. Here, it is a flea and a fly in a flue were imprisoned. So what could they do? Say the flea, let us fly. Say the fly, let us flee. So they flew through a flow in a flue. If we count the number of these words, then we will have 36 written words. Some of them are repeated. And then here's the question. Should fly noun and fly verbs be counted as the same since they sound the same, or as different because they have different meanings? Should fly and flew be regarded as the same because they belong to the same verb, or as a different because they have different forms? All these questions are in need of answer, and in order to solve these problems, we need to see that it is important to distinguish between 3 types of words: lexical items, syntactic word, and phonological word. These examples shows that we must not expect the exact overlap between the different types of words. This is not confined to be English, but it happened and it occurs in other language as well. So we need to come up with a word concluding remarks in terms of the definition. The situation is far more complex than in English. The word is difficult to define because there are different kinds of words. Let's move on to the identifying words. How can we identify or consider that this chunk as a word? It is important to identify these various types of words. There are 2 main stages in the analysis, so we need to know what are lists and stages. The first one is finding chunks such as fly, flow, which occur as self-contained units. And the second one is deciding how many lexical items are covered by each chunk, as with fly, which covered 2 lexical items. And conversely, deciding how many different chunks belong to the same lexical item, as with fly, flew, where different syntactic forms belong to one lexical item.
The next topic is morphemes. What is morphemes? Morphemes is the smallest syntactic unit. To make it simple, morphemes is the smallest part of a word that has grammatical function or meaning. For example, sod, sun, sewing, and sauce can all be analyzed into the morphemes saw plus ed, n, ing, and s. Morphemes vary in size. Neither syllables nor length are any guide to their identification. The essential criterion is that a morpheme cannot be cut up into smaller syntactic segments. Now look at the example. The sentence has 11 morphemes. They are the, sleep, walk, ink, albatross, chant, ed, a, dream, y, lullaby. The, albatross, a, lullaby are all single morphemes because none of them can be syntactically split up further. Alba and Tross, for example, do not have any other role to play in the syntax of English because they exist only as part of the single unit, albatross. Chanted and dreamy, on the other hand, each consists of two morphemes. Chant is found in words such as chanting, chants, and is also a word by itself, while ed is found in wanted and so on. Now, let's move on to the recognition of morphemes. Morphemes are recognized by looking for partial similarities between words. Look at the example. The dinosaur sniffed arrogantly and plodded forwards. The dinosaur grunted loudly and edged backwards. The partial similarity between sniffed, grunted, plodded, and edged enables one to isolate the segment ed. And the partial similarity between arrogantly and loudly and between backwards and forwards makes it possible to isolate li and words. The next one is types of morphemes. There are two types of morphemes. The first one is free morphemes. Morphemes such as albatross, chant, lullaby can occur by themselves as whole words. It can occur on their own without any morphemes necessarily attached to them, such as manage in management, mother in motherhood, or words such as pen, tea, and man. Free morphemes can be subcategorized into lexical morphemes. Morphemes that carry the content or meaning of the message that we are conveying. In order to identify a lexical morpheme such as baby, follow, yellow, pig, read, and so on. Functional morphemes. Morphemes that do not carry the content of a message, but rather help the grammar of the sentence function, such as but, when, near, above, at, she, in, and so on. The second one is bound morphemes. Morphemes such as anti, ed, li, which must be attached to another, are bound morphemes. Bound morphemes can be subcategorized into derivational morphemes. It creates an entirely new word. There are two kinds of derivational morphemes. They are prefix, it's in the beginning of a word. Example, anti plus phrase verb is antiphrase noun. Suffix, it's in the end of a word. Example, beauty, noun plus full is beautiful, adjective. Another examples of derivational morphemes are nest in happiness, ish in greenish, and meant in establishment. Inflectional morphemes. It doesn't create an entirely new word. It provides further information about an existing lexical item. Example, Book noun plus s is books noun. Another examples of inflectional morphemes are the plural, as in owls, and the possessive, as in Peter's car. Now look at the example. The owl looked up at the cloudy sky. Look and cloudy are similar, consisting of one free morpheme followed by a bound one. Ed on the end of look is an inflectional morpheme, since it provides further information about an existing lexical item. Look in this case indicating that the looking occurred in the past. Y on the end of cloudy behaves rather differently. It is a derivational morpheme, one which creates an entirely new word. Cloud and cloudy behave quite differently and fit into different slots in the sentence. Above all, inflectional endings do not alter the syntactic behavior of an item in any major way. The word still fits into the same slot in the sentence. Derivational endings create entirely new words. In addition, inflectional endings can be added onto derivational ones, but not vice versa. That is, we find words such as establishment as, but not establish as meant.
Let's move to the next topic, allomorphs. Sometimes a morpheme has only one phonological form, but frequently it has a number of variants known as allomorphs. An allomorphs is one of two or more complementary morphs which manifest a morpheme in its different phonological or morphological environment. Here are some. There are two conditions of allomorphs: phonological conditioning and lexical conditioning. Phonological conditioning can happen if the conditioning factor is determined by phonological context. Then, the allomorphic condition is phonological. For the example, English morphemes can appear as in books, z as in dogs, and is as in boxes. Now, lexical conditioning. Lexical conditioning can happen when an irregular morph is used with a specific lexical item or small group of lexical items. Example, the noun plural an. It is determined by child, ox, and brother. Word classes. What is word classes? Word classes is a set or category of words. Words having some property or attribute in common and differentiated from other by kind, type, or quality. Words are classified into word classes partly on account of their syntactic behavior, partly on the basis of their morphological form. Here are the word classes. There are 8: noun, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, preposition, conjunctions, and interjection. Noun is a word that can be used to refer to a person or place or things. The example of noun are lady, road, tree, loves, dream, pencil, bob, and so on. Next, pronouns. The function of pronouns is function word that is used in the place of a noun or a noun phrase. For example, he, she, it, you, we, and so on. And now verbs. Verbs is a word that serves as the predicate of a sentence. Major word classes. English has 4 major word classes that are nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. But sometimes the formation isn't that way. It can be nouns, verbs, adjectives, and preposition, just like the example below. Big frogs swim underwater. Big is adjective, frog is a noun, swim is a verb, under is a preposition, while the water is a verb too. Of these 4 major classes, nouns, verbs, and preposition behave fairly differently from one another, though adjectives are somewhat strange in that they have some noun-like qualities and some verb-like ones. Yeah, and that's the major word classes.